Welcome to Wild Wing Cafe here off of Mallard Creek Church Road, the Alan Major Show. Our phone number is 704-358-8768. That's 704-358-8768. And we'll be here to take your phone calls until 8 o'clock, talking Charlotte 49ers basketball with the Niners head coach, Alan Major. And we're here from the 49erfanatics.com broadcast booth inside of Wild Wing Cafe. Coach, good to see you again.
You too.
And a quick turnaround from last night after the Wednesday night game. Back here tonight to talk about the game and last couple of weeks with the Niners. And unfortunately, last night a tough one. And, back to work today with practice and the road game coming up this weekend against St. Louis. We got a stretch of games now coming up where we got more on the road than at home to finish out the season. But with 5 games left, still, good things could happen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The tough part with last night was just didn't bring what we're capable of bringing. And, there was 2 stretches in that game I thought were pivotal. One was, 23-18 in the first half, and we had 3 different possessions there, where we had chances to maybe kind of cut into it. And one of those possessions was 2 missed free throws. Then in the second half, we'd had just a crazy sequence. We're down 10. JB had just hit a 3. We get a steal. Dario does an unbelievable job stealing the ball off an inbounds pass, actually falls down in front of our bench trying to save it. They end up getting the ball back. We steal it again. And then Deuce had the pass to Dario. They just got their signals crossed, and he ended up, lost his footing on the layup. But, right there, you're 2 plays away from cutting it to 6. And that just goes to show you, it's just such a margin for error in basketball, for us in particular because of our numbers. And every game just has those little things that can turn it one way or the other. So it's just a game of inches. We showed the guys a film. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Any Given Sunday.
Yes.
We showed them the deal at the end, the speech about game of inches and, how basketball is the same way. Obviously, he's talking about football in the movie, but same thing in basketball. You just have to really gain an appreciation for every single possession in the game.
You've always said this, and it's true. You get the conference season, and it's so much more difficult to win in the conference because teams know you so well. Mm-hmm. Every team, whether you're number 1 in the country or sitting in the bottom of a league somewhere, has weaknesses, and teams can really look at film and try to take advantage of those with each club. What have you seen teams try to do to us so far that's kind of changed things in the conference play?
I would say probably, due to our guard depth, teams have tried to amp up the pressure a little bit, whether it be full court or in the half court. In the post, they tried to be physical with our big guys and force them to make, finish against contact and hits. And, 2 ACC refs last night, so they're going to let you play. But that's been in the backstretch, the 2 things I've tried to, really focus on, I've noticed the most. So as a result, we focus on trying to handle those things accordingly. And St. Louis will be no different, very physical team, well coached, and they're sound, even despite their youth. I mean, they're sound in terms of, Majerus and his system and what they've done. So it'll be a very similar game this weekend from a grinded-out standpoint as you look at their scores. They haven't had a lot of high-scoring games, and the pace will be a very deliberate pace game, I think.
What makes a Rick Majerus coach team so unique in how they approach things?
Position defense. For people that watch Big Ten basketball, I'd say very similar to Wisconsin in terms of style of play. If you're using the football analogy, it's like a team that runs the football, 2 out of every 3 downs, or finish a game. They try to focus on time of possession, so to speak. So they're just sound. He's obviously a Hall of Famer in terms of his experience, and his mindset is, hey, we're not going to beat ourselves. We're going to make you make plays. But it won't be because we're out of position or out of kilter, And defensively is where they try to hang their hat, based on their youth.
The way teams like St. Louis likes to play, and it's a lower scoring game, is there a misconception? Because we kind of thought about this for a long time. When you're playing a team like St. Louis and you're down 10 late in the game, it's tougher to come back against because the possessions are certainly limited. But I heard Bo Ryan do an interview a couple of days ago, and he said that's kind of a misconception of the way we are. We came back down it was a 14 or 17 to beat Ohio State the other night. And people think because the style we play, we can't come from behind, but they can. So when you're playing a team like that, you get behind them, it's kind of like a misconception you can't come back and win that game.
Yeah, it's and that Wisconsin game was just skewed because they were down 15, and they just went on an unbelievable run of making threes. So it wasn't as if they pressed Ohio State in the turnovers to get back. Usually that's the conventional way. People think you're down and you start pressing, and other team coughs it up, and you get back and you get a couple easy ones. They just went on an unbelievable stretch. They made 7 threes in the last 3 minutes of the game to win. So, but that can be against teams that are a little bit more possession oriented, especially if they do a good job taking care of the ball. Because if a team takes care of the ball really well, it's a little tougher to speed them up.
Our phone number is 704-358-8768. We'll also have some email questions as well from the 49erfanatics.com weekly email segment. And you can send us an email for next week's show at major49ershow@yahoo.com. We have all our questions for tonight already, but for next week, major49ershow@yahoo.com. Coach, looking at the Bojangles, bow time, maybe a changing moment let's go back to Saturday in the Rhode Island game. Was there a moment where you felt like in the second half there was a flurry of turnovers after they put the press on and they made a couple of big shots? What was a moment in that game where you kind of felt like, okay, you got to put the brakes on here and try to stop what they're doing?
Probably in that stretch, when they cut into our large lead. It's a combination of that and offensively just settling down and not feeling like you have to come right back and make a play to stop their run. It's trusting the system and settling down a little bit. But that stretch where I want to say it may have been the second, we call them 4-minute wars, but the second 4-minute segment where they went on a pretty good run. I want to say it was, I believe, 15-2. And the one kid was, pretty responsible for that. It was partially turnovers, but it was the one kid busting loose, the guard, Richmond, that made 2 threes off underneath out of bounds, made another one in transition. So almost it was like a Jordan Taylor-esque type of run that he put on, almost single-handedly when one guy broke loose. So, and then later in the game, some of a couple of turnovers became relevant, but that stretch was pivotal because of we'd done a great job on James, had done a great job on Jones. And the one other guy that was capable that we didn't want to break loose, broke loose, and that was Richmond making threes.
In that game, Nikola Milesevic had a pretty good game as well, 19 points. He's a guy that can certainly shoot the three. Mm-hmm. He was one of 2 players in the country coming in shooting 50% from the floor and almost 50%, 49% from the three-point line. Mm-hmm. He's European, but to me, he kind of has a little different game than most of the guys that come over. He'll bang a little bit inside, too.
Yeah, no, he the Dayton game before that, he posted up inside, and even against us, I think he got a couple of buckets where he got the ball down on the block and just, pounded it middle and jumped up and knocked in a couple. So he's a little deceiving because you think he's just a catch-and-shoot guy based on his numbers, but no, he'll go in and post up and put us back to the basket, too.
Another one of those overtime games. We talked about it on the pregame show last night, but just the heartbreaking end to that ball game for you guys. And you go back, you look at tape, and you know what you could do going forward. But at that moment, it's just got to be just really, heartbreaking's a tough word to use for this because at the end, there's nothing you can do once that ball goes in. They went back to the monitor. You knew at that point that it was going to be good. And it took a little bit of time to get the final call there, but tough way to lose that one.
Yeah, it's the thing we just try to illustrate to the guys is that, to the regular eye, it looks like that's the play that did it, and what we try to get guys to understand is, there may be 75 possessions in a basketball game, and basically basketball is 75 one-possession games. And every time you're in a possession on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, that's a game within itself. And, if you score, obviously, you won that little game. If you don't and they go down and score, then you lose it. And, sometimes it's a play in the first half or it's a play, if we stop one of the threes that Richmond hits, you win it. I mean, there's so many other ways that you could probably win the game other than just that. at the end, because that was the last play, that's the one you remember. But we're just trying to continue to get our guys to think the game all the way through and understand that every single play matters, especially with our margin for error. Every single play is important.
In that game, that was the game that Chris Braswell had the double-double, his 5th of the season, coming off the bench. You wanted to limit his possibility for fouls in the first 5 minutes, and it played out well for you with the 17 points and 10 rebounds. And you mentioned last night, with individual players, sometimes guys just react better in a starting role, and some don't mind coming off the bench. And you think of some great players that have had fantastic careers, like a Kevin McHale as a 6th man for the Celtics, Vinnie Johnson with the Pistons. They really thrived in those roles and didn't want to be a starter. Braz did a nice job coming off the bench. As an individual, as you coached him, is he a guy that could take that role, or is this something that sporadically you'll do because of the foul situation? But do you see him, envision him as a guy that maybe could do something like that?
I think so, and I think both those guys are, because really at the end of the day, when you look at the box score, the minutes end up really being about the same. Whether one guy starts and one guy comes off, it all shakes down to about even. So, and ultimately, you want a team full of guys like that, where there's no, no one has an ego, no one has any of that stuff, and like, hey, I'm gonna do what I have to do. For us to get the job done, and for the most part, that we have guys like that, and those two guys have done a nice job when we've called on them to either start or come off the bench, of just saying, hey, what do we have to do to get it done? So, the one thing that does help sometimes is in Braswell's case is when he subs, he's attacking their subs. And sometimes their second guys may not be as good as post defenders as their starters. So that's a little bit of a scenario that you get, and I think that helped him a little bit too, have some success.
As he posts up down low, we saw it last night, and credit that ACC crew where they did not allow the grabbing and holding, Benson holding him, or right at the beginning. There were a couple of times when there were foul calls, he was having to pull his shorts back up because they were trying to hold him and pull him back. and that's where the frustration fouls kind of come in. If you don't get that call, then he's trying to hook him or move him, and that's when he picks up those quick fouls.
Exactly, yeah. It's that reactionary thing happens. But, and we talked about that today of just, good teams are going to be more physical than normal. And ultimately, when you want to play in the month of March, and be a team that's reckoned with like that, you always want to practice and prepare to play against that. You never want to practice and prepare to play against maybe a team that won't challenge you or won't draw it out of you. You want to prep yourself for that all the time. Now, when you go play them, there's really nothing that they can do to you yet and prep yourself for. And that's a tough part about being a post player is finishing while you're getting hit. If you're a guard and you go up to shoot and you get hit, it's a foul most of the time. When you're big and you go up and you get hit, and the ref just says, stop whining, keep playing, depending on the official or how the game's being called. So it's two totally different games, from the perimeter to the post.
Wanted to get your thought on this too. It happened in the Rhode Island game and happened again last night. When you look at Jamar Briscoe, and he is smaller, and as he's going up against a bigger, stronger guard, even though you see guards do this all the time, trying to create a little bit of space, either the step back, maybe there's not even a lot of contact by putting your arm out there, but do you think because of maybe his size, and it's just so obvious that he's trying to get some space, he's picking up that little offensive foul?
Yeah, I always thought, a guy would really have to get an advantage, when that happens. To me, that's the whole, thing about fouls is, advantage versus disadvantage, and position of strength versus position of weakness. And, I never thought he was strong enough to push too many people off. I love him to death, but he's just a little guy. I mean, he's not like he knocked the guy out of bounds.
Right.
So, but he's had a couple where, and you go back on film, and he did extend, but that's part of it. But I think when you can be his size, there's a little temptation to try to get your room, against those guys that are trying to crawl into you a little bit. But he's only had maybe 2 or 3 of those all season. For the most part, he's done a great job of not having many more.
Is it hard to break habits if that's kind of the way you've played for a long time? You don't even think you're doing it. I would guess at this point it's hard to break that habit.
Yeah, that's part of it. And luckily he hasn't had very many. I think he's only had maybe 2 or 3, 3 or 4 all season at the most. So, but he's Baltimore kid, he was playing around the way there in the neighborhood or whatever, and you can have some little tricks in your pocket that you're used to. So that's probably one of them that he's been used to growing up.
DeMond Brown's certainly been around a lot this year. Has he played a little one-on-one with Deuce at all? A couple of Baltimore guys?
Yeah, I think they've done some stuff in the off season, and DeMond's great. I mean, he's a 49er through and through. And he's basically tried to relay some things to Deuce that he was successful with when he played. Of just when you play that position, that there's a leadership component to it in terms of pulling guys in and having that verbal interaction on every play. And so I'm sure he'll be back around in the springtime, once we, back to our spring workouts and pick up games and things like that.
A lot more left in the show. Our phone number is 704-358-8768. That's 704-358-8768. We'll continue with more in a moment, but first a timeout here from Wild Wing Cafe and the 49erfanatics.com broadcast booth. This is the Allen Major Show from Signature Sports Group. Welcome back to the Allen Major Show here on 1660 WBCN, America's Talk with Coach Major. I'm Matt Swarad. Our phone number is 704-358-8768. 704-358-8768. Here until 8 o'clock tonight with the Niners head coach talking about what's coming up. And still 5 games left in the regular season and the conference tournament. And tonight there's one game in the A-10, but it's a big one. And it's underway right now, actually. Richmond at Temple. And they're both 9-2 in the conference. A game behind Xavier, who's 10-1. And Xavier's only loss, of course, has been to the 49ers. We got a return date to Cincinnati coming up later in March. But, Coach, tonight that game is at Temple. They've not lost at home this season. And both those teams look to be NCAA tournament teams right now. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a pretty good game tonight.
Oh, yeah. Fran is great. I mean, I've gotten to know him a little bit. He's heavily involved in the Coaches vs. Cancer stuff. And their guard play and their wing play is very good. Randall's really good. Moore is really good. They're almost like bookends, and both 6'5", both very skilled with the ball. And Fernandez is kind of like their Joe Montana. He just kind of spreads it around and not flashy.
Yes.
Gets the ball to guys, and them winning at Dayton without Allen to me was impressive. Because that Dayton's tough team at home and great atmosphere, and they went in there and really kind of controlled the game from beginning to end. So and obviously Richmond too. I mean, they've got Harper's terrific, and Anderson. Those kind of got a two-headed monster going there. So that'll be a good one. I mean, I'm guessing it'll be single digits either way.
Looking at Coach Dunphy, as you mentioned, when you take over for a legend like he did with Coach Chaney, it's a tough job. A lot of guys don't want it, but he had so much success at Penn, and he was so well respected in the city already. He already had a big name kind of coming in there, respect in that city, and what he's done it's really been a fantastic job. Yeah,
it really has. And I don't know Coach Chaney personally, but just having read about him and followed him throughout his career, it wouldn't be surprising if he almost kind of handpicked that one himself, and just said, "Hey, Fran, I wouldn't mind if you kind of took this over," that type of thing. Just, I'm sure they had a great relationship throughout the years, with the Big Five stuff going on and all that. But yeah, he's done a great job. They're just, again, sound. I think their stats at Dayton: 19 assists, 9 turnovers on the road, and don't beat themselves. Got a lot of different weapons. Not a ton of depth, but the 8 guys that they play, every single guy has something that he can do that can really, really hurt you.
A lot of things that you talk about, what you want to do here, very similar to what Coach Chaney tried to do with his players at Temple. And he was a lot about not just basketball, but helping them be better young men and future for lives. Mm-hmm. One thing that he did that a lot of coaches haven't really kind of picked up on. I was kind of curious as to why. You did in the summertime, having guys come and work out and practice at 5:36 in the morning. but it seemed like they practiced almost all the time at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And it was a different kind of philosophy. Why do you think maybe more people haven't picked up on that?
It just varies. I know one reason probably why he did it was the city of Philadelphia, obviously a lot of social distractions at night. And so, if you're a college kid and you're in Philadelphia, if you knew practice was at 3 o'clock, you're probably going to be tempted to go do a couple things in the evening. So,
sure.
Coach Chaney thinking a step ahead. It's like, hey, the guy knows he's got to wake up. He's going to be going to bed at night. And but what you get out of that, as well as a bonus is, you develop some toughness because if you can do something difficult early, then the rest of the day should be a breeze. And our point of doing that in the summertime was, obviously to try to develop that mentality of, when you leave Charlotte and you get out in the real world and you work for a living. I asked one guy one day as he was walking in, rubbing his eyes, I can't remember which guy it was, but I just said, look, if the real world offered you a job for $100,000, but yet you had to wake up at 6:30 in the morning to do it, and you had to raise a wife and 2 kids, would you do it? And, oh yeah, $100,000. When you say $100,000, it's the whole countenance change. But the idea is, we just want guys, if it happens in the real world, we just want them to be able to say they've been there before and have the mental toughness to do it when life asks you to do it. Because right now, you're getting to do it because you're on scholarship and, this is the best time of your life. But when you have to do it in the real world in a tough economy and support a family, that's a real deal at that point. And so we just want them to have the mental toughness to look back and say, you know what, I did it in college, no problem. If I got to do it to raise my family, no big deal. And then the other point was we don't want your wife to hear you complaining in the real world that you got to wake up and do it, because then you got a whole other issue altogether to deal with there.
Makes getting up for that 8 o'clock class easy, too.
Right.
Got a score update, too. Temple 15, Richmond 12, 11:54 left in the first half. Harper has 8 for Richmond, and Moore and Fernandez 5 apiece for Temple. So looks like from the early goings, that's going to be a pretty good game at the Leah Center tonight over there in Philadelphia. Hey, Coach, let's get some of our email questions. The email address for the next show is major49ershow@yahoo.com. The weekly email questions coming from 49erfanatics.com. And the first one is from Chris Overton, Coach. And he says, I'm writing this email before the Dayton game. Heck, that game could go into overtime, too. Have you ever been involved in a season with this many overtime games? How tough is it to get the team off the mat after such a loss like the Rhode Island game? We've kind of touched on overtime games, but this is coming from Chris, and he was kind of curious about, that game in particular.
Yeah, I was really concerned more, not so much about last night. It was just Monday's practice after Rhode Island. I was concerned with, and ironically, it was one of our better ones of the year. Guys came back. They were really sharp. Shoes were squeaking all over the place. That's a good sign. There was pop in the gym, on Monday. And even had it on Tuesday. Had a great shoot-around yesterday. I just think as the game wore on yesterday, the fact that we had missed some early opportunities to score, missed some free throws, I just think that mental part of it got in our head. And, we tied our defensive effort, to our offense a little bit. But, we just stressed, to these guys that every day, again, real world, real life lessons that you got to come back and fight. You got to come back and battle. Life is going to put you in some situations that aren't very pretty. And this is just, obviously we want to win as many games as we can, but we always try to say, forget the experience of a loss, but remember the lesson. And what you try to draw is, hey, how does this apply to something that might help me later on, in the real world? And, sometimes somebody gets laid off. Sometimes, things happen that aren't, pretty. There's illnesses, whatever. And it's the mental fortitude that you have to develop to keep bouncing back is what you take from it. And you hate having to, lose some tough games to learn some of these lessons. But I'm proud of the fact that the guys have not laid down. They've continued to battle. Practice was good today. And, we said from day one, we got here, it's like building a spaceship, and we look at each other in the eye every day. And when you're trying to build something that's extraordinary and build something that's special, you're going to have some pitfalls, and you're going to take some punches in the mouth. And but at the same time, we all know among staff and players that what we're trying to do ultimately is do this in a way that's extraordinary. And whenever that day comes, God willing, it'll make it that much sweeter.
Next question, Coach, comes from Graham Waters, and he says, what can you take from last year's win over St. Louis? We played them again this year without their great point guard, Quamaine Mitchell. How different are they? And does Coach Majerus run the same offense as last year? And by the way, the win last year ended our really long streak of consecutive games with a three-pointer. I think it was more than 10 years, maybe longer. And it was a game where we didn't hit the three, but we did win the ball game. And talk about, have you seen some tape from that game at all? And I guess, how different are they without Mitchell?
Yeah, and Mitchell and the other big kid.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, Will. Not
Reed.
Yeah, yep. They had their kind of a domestic deal that went down early on in the year. What it does is it kind of takes away maybe that go-to factor a little bit. And obviously, the point totals, you missed those two. I think one guy was 15, another guy may have been 14 or 12. So, and we're going through it in our own ways. In some ways, it puts pressure on maybe guys that haven't been through that before. And so they're playing some guys that are in some uncharted waters in terms of young and being leaned on when you haven't gone through that before. And, similar to us, with guys like JB, KJ, going through it that, last year when you're non-rotational guys, now you're being counted on to maybe do some things that you're not quite used to, and you're just learning on the fly as you go through it. So, but that's been the biggest thing, that I noticed with them is that you just maybe don't have quite that go-to factor that you would normally have.
Last year the Niners went 0 for 7, by the way, from the three-point line to snap a 22-year streak of hitting a three-point shot in at least 669 straight games. So
wow.
It dated back to 1988. But, hey, won the ball game. That's all that matters, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We used to go to St. Louis and play in the Savas Center, that big downtown arena, which is also the home of the St. Louis Blues. It was always very cold because the ice below the floor. The rims were not shooters' rims, and there was some very ugly shooting nights in that building. Chaffetz Arena is not nearly as tough to shoot in. You look at them, though, they got a couple of Australian kids that have had some success there, and Ellis being one of them. But how has it changed with them getting the ball without Mitchell there?
Yeah, they've probably become a little bit more of a skill bunch. When you have a guy with size that can pick and pop like that, it's unique. It's a little different. So they haven't had great shooting games. They're a little bit more pick and roll oriented, where in the past Majerus has been kind of a motion guy. 4 out, 1 in, and so that part is adjusted a little bit. They're a little bit more of like a ball screen continuity, as we call it, similar to what Xavier runs. Where you get ball screen opportunities on both sides of the floor, but yeah, that's when you have a guy with size that can stretch you, like that. That's unique, and that's something you have to have great awareness of as well, because normally used to guys that size being around the rim.
I said Ellis, I meant Kyle Cassidy, but
oh yeah,
a pretty talented couple of guys there, and they've always had back to Liddell and Lish when they were there. Coach Soderberg brought him in, then of course Coach Majerus had him. They've always had 2 or 3 pretty good players. You can go back to Larry Hughes. They've been a team that played really, really up tempo when Charlie Spoonhour was the head coach. Then once he left, they've had kind of a succession of coaches that have really slowed things down.
Yeah,
it's been a totally different style there.
Yeah, and Soderberg's roots were kind of the Dick Bennett, the Wisconsin family, so they were a little bit more ball control, pack line defense, type of thing, low possession game. And then obviously, Coach Majerus, very similar. A lot of those guys kind of have that Milwaukee background as well. So very similar mindset, but you know, especially when you lose two scorers like they had, I think that probably creates a little bit more of that too. Where, you know, when you have a couple more guys, you'd probably be a little bit more risky.
Next question comes from Preston Guy. Coach, he says, you've been in Charlotte for almost a year now. What have you found to be your favorite thing to do here besides the drive to Halton Arena?
The drive home. No, honestly, I'm trying to think of what else I've done since we've been here. It hasn't really been a whole lot. I just kind of been using the month of, like, you know, April after recruiting, so really the month of May, you know, to try to actually, like, see what else is around town. I went to the 600 last year. I got initiated there. You know, went out to that thing. That was quite an experience. And obviously to the Wachovia, out to the golf tournament, which was unbelievable. You know, seeing those guys play. But other than that, you know, just kind of been buried. But have loved every minute of it. Honestly, you know, my mom is such a big. Everything happens for a reason. You know how your parents are. They always try to get you to see the big picture. And she's been unbelievable as far as, you know, hey, don't take the things that you're going through now as an indication of what's going to happen in the future, because it's all, you know, it's toughening all our skins, and it's going to help us appreciate the success that follows. And but so I really haven't done a whole lot. But, yeah, I'd say drive home, I found a Starbucks.
Did you?
Yeah, in South Park. I will say that. It's been a big accomplishment. Found a Starbucks right next to the Harris Teeter grocery store down there. So
We're Niners fans, shop for groceries.
Small victories, you know. I mean, the things that I'm a simple guy. You know, it take me a whole lot, you know, to, you know, get me excited. But you know, finding the Starbucks was big.
Well, this summer you got the open invitation to come up and hang out with me in the press box at Knight Stadium and try your hand at some baseball play-by-play if you're up to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I will. I think we talked about that a little bit last year, and one of the dates never worked out. But no, I definitely. That was my first sport I ever played. Actually, was baseball. 8 years old, and you know, big old afro sticking out the side of the hat. Makes you wonder where it went now. Yeah, coaching took the afro away, but yeah, 8 years old. That was my first sport I ever played, Little League, and I love baseball. So I will take you up on that.
Yeah, we'll have some fun.
Yeah.
All right, we got a timeout to take here on the Alan Major Show from Wild Wing Cafe. More to come. We got a special guest, too, Ryan Atchison, the strength and conditioning coach for the 49ers and formerly with the Houston Rockets in the NBA. Going to be joining me in a moment. We'll talk about that. And also the game coming up this weekend at St. Louis. Next week we go to George Washington. Don't forget with that one, that's the Amtrak train trip with 49erfanatics.com. So for more information about that, go to 49erfanatics.com. or call Nick McIntyre. We'll give you that number a little bit later on. This is the Alan Major Show from Signature Sports Group. Welcome back on the Alan Major Show from Wild Wing Cafe from the 49erfanatics.com broadcast center. And alongside Coach Major, I'm Matt Swart. Our special guest today is Ryan Atchison, the Niners head strength and conditioning coach. And our interview here brought to us by Ortho Carolina. Ortho Carolina, you improved. Also, I want to remind you that you can catch the Alan Major Show on tape delay on the university's cable television network, which can be seen locally on Time Warner Cable Channel 22 at 3 different times tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Well, Atch, good to see you. Thanks for taking some time out of your night before travel day to come on over here and talk with us.
It's good to be here.
You've been here a little while now as the strength and conditioning coach. You're coming from the NBA with the Houston Rockets and back in the college ranks. You had been in college before, of course. Had a lot of success with Rice University, won a national championship with the baseball team.
Yes, sure
Tell
did.
us some of the differences, though, you know, training, say, a baseball player compared to a basketball player.
Well, most of it's about the same. It's about force application, meaning how much force I can apply to the ground. The faster I go, the faster I run. Of course, you're in a rotational sport more, in a throwing sport for baseball, and you know, basketball is a jumping sport with a high skill level. Now, baseball is a different kind of skill level, hitting or pitching, but it's totally different. You saw Michael Jordan saying it's totally different sport, going from basketball to baseball, and he didn't have as much success.
Just like coaches, strength and conditioning coaches have their philosophy and what they think is good for a basketball player. And you came in with your ideas. What are some of the things that you like to emphasize in trying to get these guys to be the best they can be?
Well, I'm an Olympic base, so Olympic lift. It comes from University of Tennessee base was where I learned it. At Louisiana Tech, where I started, a guy was from Tennessee. Now he's the head strength coach for the Buffalo Bills. But it was a football base, and then anything Olympic or underneath the center of mass, meaning when I'm standing with my feet up underneath me, I can apply more force. How? Through squatting or some type of Olympic lift, or or a single leg movement, meaning underneath my hip, through a single leg movement. There's other different ways to do things, saying you stick them on a leg press or not. But my big thing is under center of mass, how much force I can apply, meaning how much weight I can push.
When you're trying to get a guy to push themselves a little bit further, we know when they come in, they've played basketball in high school, they've had practice, they know what to go through that way. And there is some strength and conditioning programs now at the high school levels, but it's not like what you guys are doing once they get here. How difficult is it to break through and get them to understand what they need to do to be successful at the Division I college level?
Yeah, I mean, first thing you do is you go through the techniques and make sure that everybody's doing it right. Nobody gets hurt. It's going to be we got a few new guys coming in. It's going to be a slow process, especially for the big guys. And I learned through NBA and the taller they are, the harder it is for them to learn, to get down in a position, get down in a stance. And go through the motion all the way through the range of motion is tough for them. So, if they're not from Texas, actually in Texas in the high school level, there are strength coaches. So while coaching in Texas and you're recruiting from that state, it was pretty easy because you had all the strength coaches in Texas, and you just come over and they know everything. If you go out of state. Texas and Louisiana. If you go out of state, there's not strength coaches in the high school level, so you have to start from scratch. Teach them every little thing. Say the freshmen are going to come in the summer, and they're going to go through the first day, and most of the days all teaching. Well, what I'm going to do is have all the freshmen come back after classes. Just the freshmen, and this is how you do this, this is how you do that, this is how you do this. And we only had one guy last year that had to do that, and it was Luca. Only had to come back and we taught him once, but this year it's going to be 4 or 5, So,
yeah.
so it's going to be a lot more individual attention to those guys coming in. Last year was relatively easy because, we had DeMario, who's a transfer, who already knew everything, being from Georgia, and then just Luca. So Luca was a one-on-one. Now I still have a one-on-one basically. 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, actually.
Been talking with Ryan Atchison, the Niners head strength and conditioning coach. A lot of it too is not just getting in there and doing the weights and all the cardio. It's also implementing a good diet as well. And in a college campus, that midnight pizza run can certainly kind of throw your program off a little bit. And that's got to be one of your challenges, isn't it?
Yeah, people actually encouraged to go get that pizza run, but the two guys that he's recruited, if they get any bigger, one of those things where one's gained 14 and one's gained 16 already, and a few of them put it on a relatively short time, which is a good thing. But the bad thing is now I can't get them any bigger, so we have to fight it through, and it's a daily weigh-in, daily, not weekly, daily for them too. Making sure they're okay. And I don't know about Luca. I don't know if he's gotten Americanized and hitting McDonald's and Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
He loves Taco Bell, right?
Yeah.
He's been Americanized.
Yeah.
So it's really, I don't think it's body fat, but he is eating a lot more calories than he used to.
Now, Go Concern's always bugging you for your little shakes that you have over there, but he's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, trying to get him to put it on and keep it on. Isn't that kind of the case?
Yeah, some guys are dedicated enough to wake up at 3 o'clock, eat, wake up at 8 o'clock, eat. I remember being, when I was getting my master's and the guys were trying to get their weight up, and they had the 3 meals a day. They had the They're on campus 3 meals a day, and they have 11 to 1:30 lunch. And and part of the deal was I go eat with them. And one of the guys, he was a running back, he tried to gain weight. He was one of the strongest guys that I ever coached. And he would go in at 11 o'clock, get a full meal, eat as much as he can, okay, and wait till 1:15 and get another full plate and eat as much as he can. You know, that's a dedicated guy. And that's probably what, you know, Gokin should be doing or trying to do. I know we've got him around from, you know, all you can eat pancakes to from 2 to at least 5 and 6, you know, and the plate's gotten big. The plate's gotten bigger, you know. But but when he
on the road, he does like pancakes.
Yeah. So when he first got here, all you can eat pancakes, 2 of them. I was like, what? I think he's now up to 5 and 6. So we're eventually going the correct way. I mean, he got in at 199. He got up to 210. He's gotten up to 210, so that's 11 pounds in 2 years, and that's you know, small victories. As Coach always says, that's a small victory.
Now, when with your background coming from the NBA, I guess that has to be a benefit for you to try and, you know, get your point across these guys, because you've seen what it takes at the highest level to be successful, coaching guys like Tracy McGrady and Yao Ming and those guys for the Houston Rockets. Does that help break through barriers when you're at the college level, trying to tell guys what they need to do to be successful, because you've seen guys and coached guys at the highest level?
Yeah, they're always wanting to know, hey, what's this guy do and what's that guy do? And sometimes I tell them what this guy, you know, what he did, and this is what happened to him. And, you know, one of the most dedicated guys was Shane Battier. And, I mean, he'd spend his, you know, he has a cook at his house. He has a hired cook at his house. 60, you know, I think that cook makes like $60,000 a year just during the season is when he's cooking for him. Every time he comes in, always gets his stuff done. You know, always gets his shots up. Comes to practice, plays hard, and then leaves. And he's one of the more dedicated guys. Luis Scola, Yao was pretty good at it. Even Rafer also was good. He liked to go out a lot, but but Rafer would come in and, hey, this is what I want, this is what I need. But, you know, and he was a point guard, so it was important for him. You know, and Ben Gundy was on him, Rafer on him all the time. And, you know, he liked being, like, coached like that. He liked being coached hard, you know.
Coach, is that also a selling point for you? I mean, with your background in the Final Four, is telling those guys, you know what it's like to get there, but also guys that want to keep playing, having someone like Atch that has been at that level too and can help them get better as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The 3 letters NBA is like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. You know, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. You know, so if you say the words NBA around our guys, I mean, you got their attention, because that's, you know, whether it be it realistic or unrealistic, that's what, you know, 9 out of 10 college basketball players aspire for. So, but when we bring kids on campus in recruiting, it's great, because it's a great, you know, gives us great credibility with not just kids but their parents. If their high school coaches come with them, you know, Atch is able to maybe say, okay, here's some things that our guys are doing, and relay, especially our guys that have, you know, already committed. You know, we have a thing where we want to start coaching them right away. So he's able to give them stuff that our guys are doing, but he gives us great credibility. And you know, we sat down when we got here and talked about what we wanted to do last summer, and we'll have another sit down here in the springtime and talk about, you know, what we want to unleash on them, you know, between the spring and the summer as well.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it too.
Hey, Atch, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Really do, and always enjoy talking with you.
Thank you.
Ryan Atch has been our guest here on the Allen Major Show today, brought to us from Ortho Carolina. Ortho Carolina, you improved. We'll come back. Still got one more segment to get through before we wrap up the show tonight. Don't forget, the Niners are on the road on Saturday. 8 o'clock tip from St. Louis. Our pregame show starts at 7:30 here on WBCN. This is the Allen Major Show from the 49erfanatics.com broadcast booth from Signature Sports Group. Welcome back to the Allen Major Show here at Wild Wing Cafe with the Niners head coach. I'm Matt Swarat. Glad to have you along tonight, here for about 6 more minutes. And time to get a phone call or two. And if you'd like to call us, 704-358-8768 is the phone number, 358-8768. If you want to send an email question for next week, The email address is major49ershow@yahoo.com. St. Louis coming up on Saturday on the road, 8 o'clock, 7:30 pregame show here on 1660 WBCN. Coach, let's go back to the game at Rhode Island with the Time Warner Cable Bundle Package Stat Stuffer brought to us by Time Warner Cable. Call Time Warner today and save on bundled TV, internet, phone. All together, call 1-800-TW-CABLE for more information. 17-10 for Braswell in that game. His fifth double-double on the season, now 13 in his career. And you look at him, he's a sophomore now. And if you project out his numbers, there have not been very many 1,000-point, 1,000-rebounder guys for the Niners in their history.
Yep.
He's on pace to maybe become one of them.
Yeah, I believe it's 3, if I'm not mistaken. Probably Cornbread, Jarvis, and Kurt Withers, I think.
I knew the first. I wasn't sure about what. Yeah,
I think that may be the 3 guys. So that's elite company right there. And I think, with us now having coached him a year and now going from as he gets into sophomore, junior year, this spring and summer will be huge for him. And I think he's got a chance to make tremendous strides and just continue to grow. He's getting better at, scoring around the rim, and he's in uncharted waters a bit, as I've talked about some other guys maybe being in boats they haven't rowed before. He's gone from maybe being a backup option last year scoring to probably one of our primary guys now, throwing the ball to the post. So, last year he would kind of be off the ball and he'd go and get an offensive rebound, stick it back in. So that's a different role in itself. And really, this 10-game stretch that we've been on ever since the loss of Phil is the longest we've had this exact same team together.
Isn't that amazing?
Which has been crazy. Yeah. I mean, every time you have an adjustment on the roster, you're basically coaching a different team. So we've kind of had to retool ourselves either through injuries or, ineligibilities and things like that. So this 10-game stretch ever since, I guess, St. Bonaventure, from that point on, that's the longest we've had the exact same team together.
When you look at this team going forward and you go back to the game last night, when you don't have as many options and you're going to have to call upon guys to do things maybe they're not comfortable doing, and maybe for some reason, Charles is just not comfortable trying to look for his offense very much. And last night, Anwan didn't really look, but you're going to need to have more options than just having 2 or 3 guys be on the floor that can score the basketball, because other teams can shut you down.
Yeah.
How tough is it to try and break through that kind of barrier, because you're going to need something from them?
Yeah, no, and that's, guys pretty much are who they are. I think the way that we've got to continue to try to improve is through our execution and through running our actions and creating some activity to where guys can play off of our movement and get some opportunities within, our structure. Because, certain guys, you just don't want to ask them to say, hey, go put it on the floor and go get a basket, because certain guys may not be built that way, and you don't want to put them in the wrong positions. But I think just continuing to improve our execution is important, because if we execute and we're sharp and we screen and we put guys in the right spots, then we're able to sometimes get things off of, off that movement and off of our structure.
When you play St. Louis on Saturday, we talked about the slowdown style, a little different type of approach when you play them. What are some of the keys you think are critical for us to get a win?
I think just being strong with the basketball, even though they may not be a team that pressures and denies or really extends, they're very physical. So being strong with the ball, I think inside, guys finishing with contact is important. Penetration when you get to the paint, you're going to get hip checked, body checked. So just taking hits, learning how to just be strong with the ball. And then defensively, having great awareness of personnel. Doing a good job with our pick and roll defense and knowing who the drivers are, who the shooters are, and how to play those guys accordingly. Did you get a chance to see last night's game at all against St. Bonaventure? They scored 73, which is kind of out of character for them. It was an 83-73 game. Such a quick turnaround. I didn't know if you had a chance yet to see that game. I hadn't yet. Was kind of focusing on us last night and getting ready for practice today. But that'll be my, with the takeout Fiesta wrap that I'm taking home, that'll be my kitchen table project, as it always is. So, I'll get to check that one out this evening. All right, so tape tonight. You're not Grey's Anatomy guy, I guess, right? So. No. I got to DVR everything, and I'll catch up with it in April.
I got the second bedroom to watch the Providence College DePaul game, I think, tonight. 'Cause the other TV is going to be occupied with something else.
Right, I got you. No, it's pretty much all ball and ESPN until springtime.
Well, Coach, as always, thanks so much, and good luck on Saturday. We'll talk to you again before the game at St. Louis on Saturday. But good luck in that game.
Thank you.
That's going to wrap up this edition of the Allen Major Show. And again, it's brought to us, as always, from Masson, home of college basketball. College basketball Masson, this game is true. I want to thank our special guest, Ryan Atchison, as well, and Travis Hancock and Darryl McCray from WBCN. And for Coach, I'm Matt Sporat. Thanks again for listening and joining us here on the Allen Major Show. We'll see you next week. So long, everybody.